Welcome back to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch journey. I'm your host, Jess Sabanko, and I can't wait to share my thoughts on one of my favorite shows with you. I'll be keeping these recaps spoiler-free and welcome fans, new and old, to join me on my journey here and on social media at Rewitched_pod on Instagram and TikTok. Currently, I'm on season 7. All right, so this week we're talking about season 7, episode 19, Freaky Phoebe. So this is very much an episode that's kind of setting us up for our back 3 of the season. We see some ongoing stuff with Zankou, even though he's not actually featured in this episode, as well as some stuff with Inspector Sheridan. In terms of our innocents and villains of the week, in the innocent category, we definitely have Phoebe falling in there, and then our villain is predominantly Imara, as well as her minions and the other demons that are featured in this episode. So to get into the sisters' individual storylines, starting with Paige, we do see that she has been assigned a charge in this episode, and in the opening scene, she's talking to Leo about not wanting to do it and talking about like trying to get out of it, and Leo's like, you're just nervous. And so she's kind of like venting about the fact that like the other time she's had white lighter duty, she's had her sisters there to back her up. This is her having to do something on her own, and he kind of gives her toast when she mentions her stomach hurts, and then is like, look, toast and venting, like it always does the job. Now go do what you need to do. The charge that she's assigned is a witch named Mitchell, who does not want a white lighter, does not want to use his powers, is very quick to be like, hey, like all these other white lighters have tried, like why do they keep sending people here? Like I don't want anything to do with you guys, go away. Throughout the episode, she's trying to figure out what it is she should do in order to get close to him. One of the things she does is tries tricking him into saving someone by crashing a rental car into a telephone pole that is like sparking, and then having him use his super speed powers in order to get her out and save her. And she's like, look, you want to save people, like it's what you want to do. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Which fair enough, because then when she tells Leo about it, he's like, you're supposed to earn his trust and not destroy it. Like it's really funny. And then she's like, okay, well, like you told me to use my instincts, I don't know what to do. And that's when Leo kind of suggests connecting to the human part of him. He's not just a witch like her, he's a person, and his powers and his magical destiny is influenced by his emotions. So that's when Paige does some research and finds out that his fiance was killed by demons. And so she shows back up at his job and tries to have a conversation with him. At first he's trying to run away, but then she brings up the fact that, you know, like it wasn't his fault, because he's very quick to be like, if I had just used my powers and not been running late that night, maybe I could have been there in time to save her. And that's when Paige uses her own past and the death of her parents to be like, look, sometimes we can't stop these things from happening. We can't save everybody. And talking about even using magic to try to change the past and how they just can't ever truly do it. And then bringing up the idea that like, look, we're just people who have the ability to save people and help them. But that doesn't mean we can save everybody. And so they do find that connection, and then she is able to use his powers in order to help save Phoebe later in the episode, where they do have a really nice moment at the end where he's like, well, my white lighter saved me, so I have to thank her instead of Phoebe thanking him for saving her, which is really cute. I do wonder if this is a one-off kind of charge for her or if he'll ever be featured again, but I did really think this was a really nice storyline for her in developing her new life as a white lighter. We see early on that she's at magic school with Leo, who's doing really well there, and she's like, hey, like, do you need an assistant? Like, I can come back. So even though she was so overwhelmed by magic school previously, this idea that trying something new like this is very scary to her, and that even though she's wanted this individual destiny for so long, she isn't fully ready for it, or at least doesn't feel like she's ready for it, even though I personally think that she is. And I like seeing this growth in her character, and I'm really excited to see where this will all go as her storyline continues. For Piper, we're once again on the track of the idea that she does want to have this normal life. She is at P3 when she's attacked by demons, and she's kind of like, demons never attack at P3, which I was trying to think about whether that's true or not, and I do feel like it has been few and far between, so I'll give them that there, because I was kind of like, haven't they been attacked there before? But I digress. Anyway, so she's very upset about this. She's like, we have to send a message so that they stop doing this. Like, I don't want to be attacked at my place of work, especially now that they don't have Leo to heal people and did have to get the police involved, which then led to Inspector Sheridan coming around. And she's like, we can trigger her memory, when Paige is kind of like, oh, like, it's fine, whatever. And this idea that the sisters are popping up, and obviously this is causing some stuff with Sheridan, who at the end of the episode we see is very much on their track, because as the sisters are vanquishing these demons who have high positions, obviously attention is going to that. So Sheridan's investigating and then sees the sisters involved in two different things, and then a judge goes missing, and she's kind of like, as she's looking at their file at the very end of the episode. And even in her conversation with Piper towards the middle of the episode, after they vanquish the councilman demon, she's like, well, you guys were the last to see him. And Piper's like, yeah, you know, like, there were some branches in our yard. And she's like, he's not even your councilman. Piper's like, yeah, we found that out after we talked to him. Like, any other questions? Like, are we good? And she's like, no. And Piper's like, look, it's just a coincidence that we were in these two, like, strange crime places. And Sheridan's like, I don't believe in coincidences. Like, I'll be seeing you guys around. And so obviously this idea that she's not giving up, which Paige then brings up at the end of the episode as well, when she's like, look, we might have gotten rid of Imara, but I don't think that we're getting rid of a Sheridan anytime soon. So obviously building up to something there as the season is coming to a close. In terms of Phoebe's individual storyline, so at the paper, they're hiring these kind of like reviewers because legal is suggesting that the paper might get sued. So everything needs to go through this extra checking process, including Phoebe's column, which means that they've hired a psychologist to kind of work with her, Dr. Randall. Phoebe is very upset about this. She's like, it's my advice. This is Ask Phoebe. Like, at first she's kind of like, look, like, I don't want to listen to what you have to say. And he's like, you don't have a choice. And then when she is possessed by Imara, which is the second part of her storyline in this episode, we do see that then Imara hits on him, kisses him, and then later in the episode is talking to him and is like, look, I don't care, do whatever you want. Which then leads to, at the end of the episode, because Phoebe of course is still worried about this, she is meeting with Elise, who's like, look, I had to fire him, because she brings the new edition and Phoebe's kind of like, do I even want to see like what he changed? She's like, he was saying crazy things. Like, he said you came on to him and that you didn't care about the paper and he could do whatever he wanted. So we can't have a liar like that working here. And Phoebe's like, yeah, like, he must have been talking to someone else, which is funny because obviously Elise doesn't know about magic. She's like, yeah, look, I brought up the fact that there's never been an issue with your column before, and until there is, like, legal can back off. And I really like the way that Elise is standing up for Phoebe here and does believe in her, though that she has had legal troubles before, specifically when Cole was doing that in season 5. But whatever, plot's sake, it's never happened before. But this is when Phoebe brings up the idea that she actually does think that professional insight would be a good thing, but that she has to talk to her sisters before she can tell Elise what her plan is. And we find out in her final conversation with her sisters that her plan is to go back to school and get her graduate degree. And this is a journey I'm definitely really excited for Phoebe to go on. I'm definitely really excited to see how this develops her career as well as kind of her as a person, because Piper kind of brings up, oh, like, I thought like your readers didn't care about credentials, and then Paige calls her out for being in denial, which again is a really cute sister moment there, but also something she struggled with throughout the series, which is that idea of like not having that formal education, which obviously she did get, and now she's like, look, like, I put in this work to get my bachelor's degree, but now I do want to go further, and I do want to be that person who isn't just insightful because of who I am as a witch, but is insightful because of this higher education that I've achieved. And I really love that journey for her, and I'm definitely excited to see how that will develop for her. In terms of our demonic storyline in this episode, so in this episode we do have our demon Imara. Early Early in the episode, she's originally going after Piper, trying to get her minions to get a piece of her hair so that she can soul swap with her. Her goal is to become a charmed one and kind of take their place. She's stolen information about them from Zankou from when he was in their house a few episodes ago and learned a lot about them, and now wants to take one of their places in order to vanquish all of Zankou's lieutenants in order to make him lose power and not rise up to be a new source. It's very clear that she was unhappy working under the previous source and doesn't want to have to go through that again with Zankou. And so she decides to pose as one of the sisters. When Paige interrupts the attack on Piper, it then becomes Phoebe who is her target, because the demon is like, wait, like Paige is less like intuitive, like why don't we go after her? And she's like, no, like she's a white lighter now, like she's very connected to the elders, we don't want to get messed up in that, so we're gonna go for Phoebe. And so there is this scene in the elevator where Phoebe's then attacked while she's arguing on the phone about the column. They do get a piece of her hair. She calls Piper, she's like, look, I got the scissors, whatever, and then is planning to deal with Dr. Randall before then going home. So obviously very distracted from their demonic duties by what's going on in her career. And then we see that Imara has this whole plan. So she is talking about not only wanting the charmed one's power, but also this idea of them being beautiful and how she wants to be that too, how Phoebe's a celebrity and she's idolized and envied, and that's what Imara wants. There are these women who I think might be demons or servants of some type, and she cuts their faces as punishment in order to make them unattractive like her, which is really interesting in terms of demons. I feel like so many of the demonic women we see are extremely beautiful, just like the way the charmed ones are. So this idea of her envy being in this place that her looks can't be used in the way we see so many demons use their looks to get what they want. And I mean, we've seen the sisters do it as well. So it is really interesting characterization for her. And then when she does go into Phoebe's body after they do the spell, this obsession with her looks that becomes a very clear indication that she's not Phoebe, constantly wanting to change outfits, look the best she can, get this attention from men that she's never had before. And, you know, for a lot of us women who have gotten a lot of attention from men, there's this idea that we want to step away from that. But she's very interested in being in the male gaze and having people desire her. And it's really, really fascinating to me. I don't know if I necessarily love it or hate it, but I do think it's a key characterization in the fact that she so specifically wants to then keep Phoebe's body, because the initial plan was to return to her own body. There is this idea, of course, of pretty privilege in our society, something that Imara feels like she's never been able to benefit from. And now in Phoebe's body, she obviously can. And so that is definitely a key part of this storyline, as well as the fact that she obviously is then tricking the sisters into going after her enemies, faking premonitions, and Piper's kind of like, you got all that for one premonition? She's like, yeah, we have to go. We have to take out this councilman and then this judge. Of course, Phoebe, inside Imara's body, trapped in a cage, is like, my sisters are going to figure this out. They're like, yeah, well, by the time they do that, like, you'll be dead, whatever. So she comes up with a plan to fake that the sisters have figured it out and reverse the spell, trying to convince them to free her. The one minion is like, I'm going to go above ground and check on this. So he goes to the house where he sees Phoebe in the attic, realizes it's Imara, but then she decides to cover because Piper hears her talking to someone upstairs, and so he is vanquished. And then she's like, look, we have to go after Imara. The demon said his name. This is right when Paige arrives because she's finally gotten through to her charge. And so they go down and they're attempting to do the vanquish, which they do succeed in, because when they arrive, Phoebe's kind of like, it's about time, because she's now been freed by convincing the other minion that obviously the reason he didn't come back is because he was vanquished. And so they appear, she's like, it's about time. Phoebe's like, no, I think we arrived just at the right moment, and then throws the potion at her. And then we see Phoebe's soul leave, and she's like, oh, well, you just killed your sister, bye. And then her and the minion go off to kill the judge, which the minion is killed in that battle. We then say the sisters coming up with a plan, because they're like, what do we do? Like, we lost Phoebe. Piper's freaking out, saying, I told you so, because she was like, I knew it was a soul swap. She was checking herself out every 5 minutes, and she's been very focused on what was going on at work. She wasn't super fight demons. Like, I should have known. And they're like, Piper, it's not your fault, like, whatever, because she's like, stressed out. Leo's like, look, we can still get her back. Like, her soul is probably not moved on, so we can get it back into her body and send Imara to the afterlife. We just need to do the same ritual. But they're like, well, how are we going to get close enough to get her hair? Which is when Paige comes up with the idea to use Mitchell, who can obviously move at super speed, in order to do it. So as she vanquishes the judge, Mitchell shows up there, steals the lock of her hair. They do the spell. She arrives at the manor. They vanquish. Phoebe goes back into her own body. She's kind of like, what took you guys? Like, how did you not know it was me? And they're like, look, like, we're sorry. Their apologies. She, of course, has that little thank you moment with Mitchell where she's then like, ooh, he's cute. And they're like, she's back, which is a really nice sister moment for them. Followed then by their final scene at the episode where they're talking about all of this again. Specifically, Paige and Piper at first are talking about the idea of like, look, like she wanted to send a message to demons. And this little rampage that Imara went on obviously did, because they think it's Phoebe that killed all those demons. So like I said, this episode is clearly setting up some really interesting storylines for the end of the season, pushing forward the idea that Zankou is building himself up in the underworld. But yeah, overall, really enjoyable episode. Definitely leaves me with a lot to look forward to. But that's all I have for this one, and I hope you'll join me back next time.